Hi, everyone. John with Akia. Thank you for joining our continued webinar series here. We're going to go ahead and get started. As always, we will record these and can disseminate this post the webinar recording here. We're excited to announce and have an expert here, if I could use that term, Ben. I think it's well deserved here. Ben is going to talk us through like social media and like converting likes into stays and ultimately driving revenue. Right, Ben? I think this is a new thing that a lot of people are learning, right? Some of the younger travelers, younger people may already be grown up with this, but people of my generation and maybe a little bit older, this is still pretty novel to them. And how do they convert these like likes and shares and posts into actual revenue? And you've really cornered this and really driven it with your properties as well. So we're excited to have you. But Ben, welcome and excited to hear more about what you have here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks, Frederick and Stephanie, everybody who helped put this together. Thanks to everyone who's joining via webinar. I think that social media is continuing to be a hot topic as it should be. For a long time, I feel like hotels and short-term rentals have taken the tick the box approach with social media accounts, and we need to have one, but we're not expecting it to drive revenue. We're not going to overly invest in it. And it's just like we need to have one to stay relevant, which is important, but I think there's so much more you can do with it. So we're going to talk about that today.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So I figured I'd start off with a little bit just of my story to set the context and how we got here. I was not somebody that was, let's say, big into social media, even big into real estate hospitality when I first started out in my career. I've had this kind of long and winding road that have led me to treehouse hotels and now social media marketing for hotels and resorts. I lived in New York City, graduated NYU, went to work at McKinsey. Even before then, though, I did have an events business in college, and that was, I think, like my original foray into hospitality. Helping show people a good time and put on a well-curated event was like the roots of my hospitality background. Went into consulting thereafter, didn't really know what I wanted to do from a starting a business perspective. Worked at McKinsey. And from there, actually, it looks like this got flipped, but from there, I actually left to start a lifestyle and events company full time. That was 2012 to 2014. And I was promoting nightclubs, running events, running curated group trips to Costa Rica, Dominican Republic. So, really, this all encompassing hospitality experience. And it was from there that I got introduced to Airbnb soon after in 2014. And I started running short-term rentals. And I was also working for an early short-term rental management company called SenStay that was founded around 2013. I started working for them in 2014. I started lease arbitraging my own apartments. So we would get multiple apartments in a building or a big townhome, take out the lease on that, furnish it. As you can see by that photo, not very nicely early on. We were doing a lot of more commodity stays, more economical offering, I would say. But over my years have progressed into higher end, more upscale and product that just plays much better on social media and is much more Instagrammable and shareable, but was not my beginnings. My beginnings were throw up listings on Airbnb and let the platform do the rest of the work, as well as other OTAs. In that early stage of kind of real estate hospitality, where I was running short-term rentals, I had a software sales job still. I still had a full-time job. This was like a side hustle. And it was in 2018 where I took the plunge, quit my software sales job, took on a few clients that wanted to get into the Airbnb and short-term rental game as well. And so took them on as clients, quit my job. Those management fees paid my salary, and I was able to go all in on short-term rentals at first. So went from 8 units in 2018 to 200 under management by the end of 2019. And that's when COVID hit, right? March 2020. Most of our inventory, most of the properties we managed were in cities. So that was a big reckoning for us in March of 2020. Largely our business got the rug pulled out from underneath us. All of our bookings got canceled. But it ultimately became an opportunity that pushed me into doing something I had thought about doing for a while, which is more outdoor focused hospitality, more of a one-of-one, highly unique experiential stay. And that The COVID experience coupled with a road trip that I had just taken with my wife on our honeymoon. We visited like 12 national parks over a month and a half or so, and just really fell in love with the great outdoors. Had lived in New York City for over a decade. And it was that really coupled with COVID and the city short-term rentals just not performing that pushed me to start looking for property and to build what became the first Onera, which is the landscape hotel brand. Some might call it a treehouse hotel in the Texas Hill Country that I built and developed in 2021. So we built that first property in 11 months, which I would not advise, wouldn't do again. Projects since then we've planned out more thoroughly, and the builds have gone smoother because of it. But we opened to a lot of success with Onera. I will say when we opened, we were just on Airbnb and VRBO, later Booking.com and Expedia. I was not thinking about social media. I was not thinking about driving direct bookings. And I'll get into kind of how that evolved, but that did evolve. We started to go all in on social media, all in on influencer marketing and driving bookings direct. And that's ultimately what led to OASI, which is the experiential hospitality marketing and management firm that I founded in 2022. So basically powering properties like Onera, and now we've evolved to really helping much bigger and in some cases branded hotels and resorts. But we really thrive in the experiential, upscale, luxury, and independent segments, I would say. So that's kind of like the high level story. And then I can dig into the details, unless John, you had anything else you wanted to double click on there.
No, great. Yeah, great background. It's
Cool.
awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Cool. When founding Onera, it really felt like the modern traveler was looking for something more than just a cookie cutter Airbnb or a soulless box that you might find in a big box hotel. So we were thinking about how do we cater to the modern traveler and what do they want? So the first question is, who is the modern traveler? To us, it's 25 to 55-year-old high earner, professional. That's right in the Gen X to Gen Z, with millennials making up the majority of it. They're tech savvy. They want a seamless experience. They engage heavily with social media when it comes to their travel decisions. They make connection-driven purchases. So they want to connect with the story of a property, or maybe even the founder or the team behind a project. And overall, they value experience over possessions, which is great for us in the business of creating experiences. And they're willing to pay a premium for a unique, experiential, authentic stay. And in some cases, they're willing to have that experiential stay make up a much bigger percentage of their overall travel budget than generations of the past. Why do they want to find their next stay on social media? I think a big one is they feel inspired to book. So the content is inspirational. They can actually visualize themselves there. It's not just static photos. They get video. They can really see what it looks and feels like to be staying somewhere, and they can visualize themselves doing it. They can connect to the founder, to the story of the property, to the journey, and then it's very easy to share it with others. It's built into the social media platforms, this sharing behavior. Click of a button, you can send it to multiple people, maybe a loved one that you want to take a romantic trip with, maybe a group of friends that you want to book a group stay with. So I talked a little bit about how at first we were just on OTAs. We were not at all concerned about social media. And that all changed when a travel creator in Central Texas that was like perfect for our product. She had a massive audience in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, and Houston, which were all of our feeder markets. And she had a ton of authority in the travel space. So she reached out to us on Airbnb actually and said, hey, I want to showcase your property. I want to do a collab post. She knew we were the new cool game in town in terms of unique stays in the Hill Country. And so she actually just offered to do it for free to show the value because we were somewhat skeptical. And her value was off the charts. So she came out, we spun up a direct booking site, we spun up an Instagram page, and in the first week following her first post, or first 2 weeks, she helped us do $15,000 in direct bookings. And then she came and posted again, and we did another $15,000 in direct bookings. So all told, about 30 grand for an unpaid collab. We now do pay her. We understand her value, and we've had her help us launch Onera Wimberley. She's coming back to launch the expansion to Onera Fredericksburg that's opening this summer. But at this property, we bumped our follower count by 7,000. At Onera Wimberley, I think it was 15,000, and just drives tens of thousands of dollars in direct bookings. But so why do we invest in social media? We invest in social media because more than half the planet is on there, closer to 60%, right? 4.7 billion people are spending multiple hours a day. And so to treat your social media account just like a nebulous branding exercise to have a page is a massive missed opportunity, I think. It's let's meet consumers where they are, which is on social. So when we look at the stats that are really compelling today, 75% of millennials and Gen Z say that social media influences their travel choices. That is massive, right? 3 and 4, almost 100% of millennials are sharing their travel experiences on social. And then over 80% are saying that social is a key component in making their decision and in researching travel destinations before they're actually booking a trip. So those are just massive numbers. In terms of the next 3 to 5 years, I have a strong belief that Instagram is going to become a top booking platform by 2030. And for some properties, it already is. Like for ours, we're doing about 80% direct for some of our properties, pretty much exclusively using organic social, with Instagram being the main channel for that. And the reason that I believe and we believe that Instagram is going to overtake other OTAs is because it's better for both travelers and owners. So for travelers, they get inspired. They get to build authentic connections with the property. They actually get to feel something that they don't feel from a static photo. They can envision themselves there, and it's very easy to share. For owners, the big ones are you're saving on OTA fees. So we are pricing the same, whether it's on an OTA or on our direct booking site. So that means we save about 14% in OTA fees, and sometimes more, depending on the platform. So that's super important. We're also reaching a much less price-sensitive guest. So you're reaching a guest that's an emotional buyer, and whether that stay this beautiful treehouse stay that they saw cost $500 a night or $650 a night, it doesn't matter to them if they have the means to pay. They have no frame of reference. They're not value shopping like they might be on an OTA, where they're really comparing value and very much discerning the price. And then the final one is you own the guest relationship from beginning to end. And then thereafter, like after the stay as well, you own that data and can remarket to them. You can build that relationship. So all reasons that direct is better for owners and travelers. So despite all of this, I would say 99% of hotels are not really investing in social media in the way that we would recommend. They have a page, it's a tick the box exercise, but they're not really investing it. They're not really looking at it as a way to drive a significant chunk of direct bookings and to really engage with their customers and their audience and grow their awareness. So there are some that are, and we're going to talk about them, but we're really in that stage of innovators that are investing ahead of the curve and are seeing massively outsized returns by doing that. We're probably just barely into the early adopters phase. And then there's this whole idea of the chasm where a few years down the line, everybody's going to catch up to some extent. And then at that point, when everybody's trying to play catch up, the innovators and the early adopters are so far ahead that they're able to reap the value for a much longer term. Whereas the late majority, the laggards, when they finally get up to speed with the program of what's going on with social, they're almost going to be too late in a way. It's table stakes. They're not going to get the same value as those that invested early. So why are they not investing? Why are they not trying to go after this 5 billion people spending multiple hours a day? And I really believe, from talking to a lot of owners, and I've been there, it is that there is a big revenue attribution problem with organic social. And I've seen this firsthand with the Onera properties. With Google Analytics, we've seen anywhere from 1% to 2% of our revenue show is attributed to organic social, which is totally crazy because for years, all we've done is organic social and we're driving about 80% of our bookings direct. So something doesn't add up there. We're driving 5 to 10,000 plus people directly from Instagram to our page a month. And so for that only to be yielding 1% to 2% of revenue just doesn't add up. So we ended up creating a survey and asked our guests at checkout, like when they're purchasing a room, the one question we ask them is, how did you hear about us? And we give them a multiple choice. More than half the guests opt in and fill out this quick survey. And 60% of guests are telling us that they found us through Instagram. So there's a massive gap there, right? And it's not all the analytics platform issue, right? There's also just an issue of buyer behavior that there's nothing that like Google can really do about. So I'll give you some examples. One is in hotels, if you see a property on social media or you see it otherwise, typically it's going to take months and 7, 10 plus touch points before you actually decide to buy. So you might see an Onera treehouse on our Instagram page. You follow other videos. Maybe you send it to your husband or wife, and then you or they may go and Google it. And then it's just going to show up as branded search when you're actually ready to book. So it's very hard to capture that. And so the best way we found is to go a little bit old school and just ask guests how they heard about us. And we're seeing massive revenue attribution when we look at it from that standpoint. Now, to do social right is not cheap, but the ROI is huge. And we'll get more into that. Early on for us, we wanted to outsource this. We didn't necessarily want to build out our own social media marketing team. So initially, we tried to hire an agency, the one that had a bunch of great logos. They were working with the Line Hotel, Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, and we thought they'd do great work for us. And we were really shocked at how much content was not a focus. They would basically send a mid-tier employee that was not a professional videographer to come and shoot content on an iPhone once a quarter. And that was sufficient content creation in their eyes. And this really blew me away. But this is very common across many marketing agencies out there today, particularly for hotels. And so I was like, this is not going to cut it. And it didn't. The engagement wasn't there. Our growth slowed from the period where I was just managing it myself and having influencers come in. So this spelled opportunity. We have to create our own team. We have to figure out a way to do this better. There has to be a better way. And so it basically embarked on this mission of building out our own content team and social media marketing team more broadly. So we hired the top videographers. We were working with the best editors we could find. Later on, we scaled out to have dedicated influencer managers and community managers, people focused on copywriting, graphic design, all these different areas that we've expanded into. And building out this team has yielded incredible results for our properties and then also other properties, which I'll get into as well. But 33 million views just for Onera, the first location, Onera Fredericksburg, multiple reels that went super viral, over 1 million views, and 5 to 10,000 link taps a month, which is how many people are actually going into our profile page and clicking on the direct booking website link for Onera. Now, in addition to social media and creating this viral content, one of our pieces of our special sauce and where I think you can get the most value is pairing a dynamic, sophisticated revenue management strategy, pricing strategy, basically, with great social media. So if you have a video going viral and you price accordingly and you can dynamically price, bump up rates, you're going to be able to capture that much more of the value than if you have rates static, because inherently videos going viral, your demand is going up in real time. So that's something we've been able to do really well. And for our own properties, obviously we manage revenue management and social. And for a number of our client properties, we manage those two components as well, just because they pair so well together. And these are just some stats from our Fredericksburg: 80% direct, over $500 ADR, 80% occupancy, 2.6 million in direct bookings, probably closer to 3 million as we stand today. Very high margins. So if hotels well, great margins are typically in the 30s. We're in the 50s, and 85K NOI per key. Some of our units are even upwards of 100 grand a key. And a big reason for that is the social media marketing, because we're getting 14% off the top, right? That's going into our bottom line that we're not paying to the OTAs. We're getting a higher paying guest. Back to that, they're less price sensitive. We find that for Onera Fredericksburg and Onera Wimberley, our direct bookings through social, the ADR is typically 25 to 30% higher because they're booking higher demand days, they're less price sensitive. And all of this culminated a success in an institutional exit where we sold to a public REIT, which was really, that sale was one of the first of its kind in this landscape hotel, unique stays, outdoor hospitality space. And we're now working with them on expanding. We have a $14 million expansion to Onera Fredericksburg, and they helped us with the financing of our second location, Onera Wimberley. And great returns for our investors. We sold to them within a year of opening, and then our full earnout for that deal was finished in year 2. So we almost 4x'd investor capital in 3 years. So after folks had seen the success we were having with Onera and come to find out that we had built out this whole content team, we started having folks, first like friends that came inbound that wanted us to manage their social media marketing, wanted us to manage their revenue and pricing. So the first that came to us was Spoon Mountain Glamping. So they were a glamping site. We're friends with the owners. Back in 22, we started working with them in early 23. So they had a big uptick in bookings during COVID, right? Everything boomed during COVID. And then when COVID cooled off the outdoor hospitality boom, post-COVID, they saw a dip and they really needed some help. So they hit us up and we went to work trying to boost their revenue again. So after a few months of trying different content formats, different social media strategies, different pricing strategies, we were able to bump their revenue almost 70% from the year that we took over to the prior year where they saw that dip. We've done 21 million views for them. Their highest performing reel has done 5.5 million views. It's one of our best across all properties. And their followers have more than tripled. So they started around 30,000 and they're now over 100,000. They also have that very high direct booking percentage, 80% plus, which is like the gold standard that we're typically looking for. Now, we had proved it out with Spoon Mountain as well as a few other clients that we could do this with landscape hotels, unique stays, more outdoor hospitality products, but we weren't sure yet that we could do it for more traditional hotels and resorts. And that came knocking in mid last year. So in June of last year, Alila Morea, which is a 4-star property right on the beach in the Southern California coastline outside San Diego and Encinitas. It was $1 million a key when it was built. It's probably worth closer to $2 million a key now. And they wanted to try our social media strategy with a more traditional hotel, albeit beautiful on the coastline. It's a Hyatt property, part of the Hyatt Unbound collection. And so this was our first foray into dealing with flagged hotels and everything that comes with that. So it was a new challenge, but we took it on. And then within 3 months, so by September, we had found content market fit with the style of hotel as well. So we had our first video go viral, hit about 800,000 views in September. A couple weeks later, had another one hit 500,000 views. And then we were ticking off these videos in the hundreds of thousands every week or two for the next 3-4 months. So we were able to grow their account very considerably. They're actually up to 70,000 followers now. They started with a little over 20,000. So we've more than 3x their followers at this point. And they've had 5 million views. One of the most exciting stats, before we took over, they were doing about 500 link taps a month. So people that would go in and click on their hotel website link in the Instagram profile, they're now doing 5 to 10,000. So that's a 10x to even upwards of 20x growth. Engagement's off the charts from what it was. And maybe the most exciting metric, so the owner at Alila Morea, he has told us that they've seen a 40% uptick in transient revenue, so leisure travel, and they haven't changed anything else from a marketing perspective, and like the geographic market has not considerably shifted or improved. So they're attributing a lion's share of that 40% boost in transient to what we're doing on the social media side. For a hotel of this size, 130 rooms, getting often $500-600 a night, that's a massive needle mover.
Easier if you have a experiential property, but how do you do this for a more typical urban hotel environment?
Yeah, so look, I think that Alila is definitely more traditional. It's not tree houses, right? So I think that it's more traditional build. Yes, it's on the coast. We have some of those really compelling drone shots. So it's more along the lines of traditional than it is super experiential or unique. With that said, so urban hotels, I think there's a number of different ways you can go. So it needs to be storytelling driven. You probably want to focus on staff content. I think the Ritz Paris does a really good job of more of an urban setting where they're showing off the various amenities they have, the design, but it's very storytelling focused in the sense like you're opening a door and then showing them everything there is to offer. You are potentially setting up this like fine dining setup for a wedding and they're showing the sequence of how that's set up. So there's things that you can follow along and get behind the scenes and behind the curtain a little bit. So it's certainly more work and often more people driven than some of the content where we have these amazing drone shots, amazing tree houses, where we still have models in the shots, but they are much more of a supporting character and not the main focus. We really just have them in the shot so you can visualize themselves there. But yeah, it certainly is more challenging with an urban property, but there's definitely things you could do. You can also focus on more lifestyle type content of things you can do and activities in the area, in the city that you could focus on in addition to the property itself. And then there's always like the restaurant, the bar, running content around that. And we've had success with the Alila restaurant, Vaga, doing behind the scenes cooking content, showing the dishes, even doing some more like entertaining and humorous content with the head of the F&B director at Vaga and at Alila. So there's things that you can do, but you certainly have to be more creative with a less inherently Instagrammable and experiential property. So what do we focus on to achieve these results? I think that's a key question. We were just getting into that. Most of our core content and properties that we do manage for today is a bit more aesthetic, right? They are nicer properties, higher end. Maybe they're highly experiential. Maybe they're on the coastline, have an amazing drone shot. So if we have a great visual hook that we typically do for these kind of properties, then we have to focus on really high quality video. So we have top videographers, top equipment. We need really amazing footage. Typically iPhone footage is not going to cut it. You'll see early on in our reels, with the hooks, we have on-screen text that calls out the location and the ideal guest profile. So in this case with Onera, it's couples. So we say couples weekend or couples retreat, couples treehouse, and then we're saying something that references the location. So when somebody's scrolling on Instagram and they see this reel, they can say, oh, that's for me, right? I live in Texas, or me and my partner need to get away. And so that hooks them in and it causes them to watch the rest of the video. We have strategic on-screen text throughout the video so that they stay engaged. We're telling them what they're looking at. We try to showcase as much of the guest experience as we can in every reel. And I think some folks think, oh, isn't that duplicative? Isn't that kind of boring for your followers to keep seeing the same thing? And the truth is, the vast majority of the people that see your reels, often 80, 90% plus, are not followers. So the folks that you're getting in front of with a reel, it may be the first and only time that they see your content. So you really want to show off what you have to offer. It's really in stories that you can speak to your followers and get a little more niche with the content that you're showing. Need to stay consistent. We see so many accounts where they're only posting a couple reels a month, and we recommend at least 2 and more like 3+ a week in a lot of cases. And then there's always the ability to invest in high ROI influencers and trying to pick the right influencers, which we'll get into as well. All right, so things to avoid. Big mistakes that we see with hotels is that they produce reels that feel like TV commercials. Like even this one that you're looking at on the right, it's beautiful. The content's very aesthetic, but it just feels like an ad. It's slower cuts. There's no text. You don't even really know what you're looking at. So we try to really feed the story for the viewer of what exactly it is they're looking at, faster cuts to keep them engaged, more storytelling, more movement, more action. Oftentimes hotels don't invest in influencers. They have an inconsistent posting cadence and the video quality is just not up to snuff. So how do we choose the right influencers? I think really the key things to look at here, are they targeted and do they have high engagement? So on the targeting front, it is, do they focus on travel and do they cater to the local audience that you're trying to hit? So if we're Onera in Texas and it's all drive-to destination, we want local Texas influencers. If you're a national destination, you might want big national influencers. And then on the engagement side, you don't want somebody with 1 million followers that's consistently putting out reels that have a couple thousand views. So you got to look at that, make sure that the amount of followers they have lines up with the view counts that are getting on some of their better performing videos. Cool. So what's next? We talked about this, the shift from OTAs to social media as a hotel distribution platform, wellness, which is another thing that I think plays really well on social, but wellness resorts and amenities continuing to hit their stride and be a big focus. We talked about urban a little bit earlier on. Frederick asked about it. I think there's a massive opportunity to create urban hotels that are more experiential, more aesthetic, more Instagrammable. And I think, that it's happened more in rural areas where land is cheaper, where maybe you can do more with integrating the landscape. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in urban that's untapped and will get brought to market in the coming years. We're seeing legacy brands get into this experiential space with Marriott acquiring Postcard, Hilton working with AutoCamp, and Hyatt partnership with Under Canvas. I think you'll probably see more of that. The big brands are recognizing that these experiential, unique experiences is what the modern traveler wants. I think you'll see the winners on the smaller operator side continue to expand and grow. We're already seeing that with some of the better operators like Bolt Farm Treehouse and us to some extent at Onera. Outpost X, if you're familiar with that property in Utah, Travis is expanding to multiple locations now. I think we're also seeing continued stabilization from the COVID era. So outdoor hospitality, experiential hospitality is still amazing, high return, great profitability, but we don't have the COVID boom that we had a couple of years ago. So things are stabilizing from there. And I believe that one-of-one experiences continuing to differentiate and not create more of a cookie cutter style product is going to be like what differentiates the winners. So those that really lean into one-of-one, that create something special and new instead of just trying to copycat somebody else, are going to be the winners with the modern traveler. We are at OASI, we're embarking on our next hotel development project. So if you're interested, hit me up. It's going to be a one-of-a-kind product in South Florida. So tropical landscape resort, think Tulum or Bali style bungalows tucked in an exotic fruit forest. But instead of having to flying international to get there, you can fly to Miami airport and drive 45 minutes. So we're really excited about this product. I've teamed up with some amazing folks for it. If you're interested, hit me up. And then to the same extent, if you're interested in what we do on the social media marketing or revenue management side, you can hit me up, email, LinkedIn, and reach out. But with that said, questions, let's hit them all.
Yeah, great stuff, Ben. That was really insightful. A lot of information there. So let's go through a couple of questions here. Really talking about budget. People are asking about what kind of budget should they expect from this and how much should they allocate towards it?
Yeah, so it definitely depends. If you're doing it yourself, I guess let's start with if you're hiring a third party. I think that at the bare minimum, you're probably looking at $5,000 a month, and that's for a couple posts a week. But typically, we're working with clients that are able to invest at least $10,000 a month, and that's going to be 3 to 4 posts a week, high quality reels. And the vast majority of that cost is actually just reinvested into the content. So we're sending top videographers, call it anywhere from 10 to 20 plus shoot days a year, where they're on site with a model shooting content from dawn until dusk. And so that's creating all this really high quality content that we can use to drive value. But one day of that shooter, that model, that production is probably worth at least $3,000. So the vast majority of the cost is chewed up in the content, but that's where you want to be spending. That's where you want to be investing. You don't want to be spending $5,000 on a social media agency that's like relying on you for the content or charging you extra for it, or sending somebody who's not qualified, that's more of an amateur with an iPhone to get footage. So don't overlook the investment in content when you're hiring somebody.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Let's see a couple more. You mentioned Instagram a lot. What about YouTube, TikTok, Facebook? Do you cross post? Do you focus on one channel versus the other?
So Instagram is our primary focus in terms of what we're creating content for. We do cross post to TikTok. We are starting to take TikTok more seriously. In the past, we've just cross posted. We haven't seen as much conversion there as we have with Instagram. I think part of it's just the demographic on TikTok. what that style of content is, how people use it, and just like the age and purchasing power of the audience there. But that is starting to shift. So we're taking it more seriously now and have more of a TikTok strategy moving forward. Facebook, we're cross posting everything, or suggested reels as it may be. So we see a lot of content that goes viral on Facebook that doesn't even do much on Instagram. So because we are optimizing for the Meta ecosystem, Instagram, Facebook does great on both of those platforms. And because we have proven creative assets, so great video that is done well organically on Instagram and Facebook, that can very easily be repurposed into paid ads if you want to run a paid ad strategy, and it becomes really good creative for your ads. YouTube, we haven't done as much with. I definitely see value there, specifically actually on the group side, which isn't as much of our focus, but like for group travel, business, leisure, weddings, whatever, like they're doing in-depth research. And I think a longer form YouTube video, meeting your director of sales or event coordinator or whoever it is that's doing that content and getting comfortable with them and really learning more about the venue and having more of a connection and trust there, I could see being really important. And I've heard it really important from folks that focus more on B2B.
Awesome. A lot of these questions, we got a couple more, Ben, but they're pretty specific about your pricing model, what it would look like. I would say anyone asking those questions, probably just email or connect with Ben directly on LinkedIn, or send him an email that he can go through.
We do a custom proposal for anybody. So just reach out. We'll have a discovery call. We'll talk to you, see if it makes sense, see if it's a fit, and then we'll talk about proposal and pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, everyone that joined today. We will be sending out the recording for everyone that registered if they weren't able to take it. Ben, this was great, man. A lot of great content here. Truly mastered a lot of this, and congratulations. Thanks again for joining us, and appreciate the insight.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone.